Hyundai has entered the off-road SUV chat with this, the Santa Fe XRT. It's got more ground clearance than the standard car and sits on aggressive all-terrain tyres, but can it really go off-road? Well, we're going to find out, but before we do, let's run the graphics and take a quick look at what Hyundai has cooked up for us. The Santa Fe XRT was created to help family SUV buyers lean further into the adventurous lifestyle so many models promise but don't always deliver. As a result, the Subaru Outback has had things all its own way for decades now, but the high-riding wagon doesn't offer a third row of seats. This does. That largely leaves the XRT in a class of one, unless you start comparing it to the entry-level Jeep Grand Cherokees, but it doesn't have a proper four-wheel drive system or a ladder frame chassis, effectively ruling it out as a genuine Prado or Everest rival. The XRT isn't a standalone variant either. It's the result of a dealer-fit makeover applicable to any current Santa Fe. There are two versions of the XRT package for Aussies to choose from, the $7,000 Adventure setup and the $10,000 peak fit-out that we have here. Both setups include new springs, shocks, hubs, wheels and tyres, mud flaps and a bash plate, but the Peak goes further with integrated side steps, roof racks and platform, a bonnet protector and weather shields. The new suspension and rolling stock add more than an inch of ground clearance to put the XRT within a bee's you-know-what of the Outback, which stands 213mm above the ground. It's worth noting as well that prices don't change if you order a pack before or after taking delivery. Now that's all well and good, but the question is, should you really be spending up to $10,000 on an accessories pack for a vehicle that's not exactly cheap in the first place? Fit a base Santa Fe hybrid all-wheel drive with the Adventure package and here in WA at least, you're looking at the best part of 70 grand drive away. Opt for the flagship Calligraphy and the Peak fit out that we have here and you're looking at more than $93,000 on the road. That's Land Rover Defender money. On paper then, the XRT treatment stacks up as a bit of a hard sell, so it's a good thing the packs are covered by Hyundai's standard accessory warranty policy. If they're fitted pre-delivery, then they're covered for 5 years. Retrofitted packs meanwhile will be covered for the remainder of the new vehicle warranty period or 3 years, whichever one's longer. The minimum 3-year coverage matches the after-sales care of most third-party accessory providers, while the vehicle age correlation betters them. An important note here is that installing third-party components nearly always voids elements of the vehicle warranty. These don't. The latest Santa Fe is already a handsome-looking vehicle, but the XRT treatment takes things up a level. I love the way it sits on these chunky wheels and tyres, and the way that the black accessories contrast against the paint, particularly this terracotta hero colour. It looks, in my opinion at least, like an all-wheel drive SUV should, especially given the whole point of them is to be more versatile and more capable than a standard passenger car. Under the bonnet of this particular XRT is a 1.6 litre turbo petrol hybrid system driving all four wheels via a 6-speed automatic transmission. Now you can also get a punchy 2.5 litre turbo paired to an 8-speed dual clutch, but that setup won't give you quite the same low speed control or finesse off-road. Claimed fuel consumption for the hybrid is 5.6 litres per 100 on the combined cycle, however there is no official figure for the XRT since it's an accessories pack rather than its own entity. That said, you don't need to be Adrian Newey to realise that these chunky all-terrains probably won't do you too many favours at the fuel bowser, unless perhaps you're a Ferrari F1 strategist, in which case you might struggle. Inside the cabin, it's all business as usual. Neither XRT package brings any interior change whatsoever, and for the most part that's a good thing because the Santa Fe has one of the more practical and well thought out cabins of the segment. The top spec Calligraphy comes with all the bells and whistles, including heated and cooled Napa leather seats, a Bose sound system, memory function for the driver's seat, dual sunroofs, surround view cameras and a head-up display. That said, it would have been nice to have seen some XRT branded rubber floor mats thrown in, given the exterior's obvious intent on getting dirty. It would also give the cabin a subtle but unique touch to help mark the XRT apart from the standard car. But enough of the fine print, let's see how this thing drives. Okay, now just before we get stuck into the off-road action, I just wanted to address the XRT's on-road manners, seeing as it rides on completely different suspension and tyres. Coming into this test, I spent a week living with the standard Calligraphy, and the thing that's apparent right off the bat is the road noise. The XRT's all-terrain tyres are much louder than the sport touring rubber fitted to the standard car, but that's hardly surprising. What is surprising is that the XRT actually has the better ride, especially on open country roads. Whereas the standard model transmits smaller bumps into the cabin and can feel a bit floaty at speed, the XRT irons out the smaller hits and recovers faster from the bigger ones. It corners flatter too, and there's no obvious grip deficit from the front end, but you can sense the powertrain is under load more of the time with those big, heavy tyres. And that fact made itself known via the fuel consumption, with the XRT averaging roughly 1 litre per 100 k's more than the standard hybrid before we went off-road. Right, we've covered the road manners, now let's get to the fun stuff. Being a full-time all-wheel drive, you can just get in and go with the Santa Fe XRT. There are 3 terrain modes covering mud, sand and snow in the Santa Fe, but none of them are necessary on faster, more open gravel tracks like this. The all-wheel drive system simply takes care of things. Now WA is renowned for its ball-bearing like pea gravel, which has claimed the ego of countless four-wheel drivers, rally drivers, mountain bikers and dirt bikers over the years, so it's needless to say that the all-terrain tyres on the XRT are a welcome addition. Together with the new suspension setup, they make the Santa Fe sure-footed and confident across a surface WRC drivers once labelled the closest thing to driving on snow. The combination also comes into its own when things become a bit lumpier and speeds start to drop. Now it's at this point the extra ground clearance, cushioning and puncture protection become a bit more valuable. The standard car kicks and thuds its way over this sort of terrain and you're always on edge waiting for it to touch the belly or kiss a bumper. But this still isn't hard enough to warrant calling in the terrain modes, so let's push on a bit and see if we can't find something a bit harder. Alrighty, that's more like it. Okay, now this hill doesn't present too much of a challenge for the average dual cab, but it has asked some major questions of the Jeep Grand Cherokee Night Eagle, and it stopped a Nissan Pathfinder in its tracks. So let's see how the XRT goes. Come on, work it out, wheels in the air, work it out, go on. Well done. So we're in mud mode at the moment. Now what mud mode does is tie the petrol engine and electric motor together. It locks the front and rear axles together and it allows a little bit of slip from the traction control to allow the tyres the chance to dig through the surface and find a bit of traction. Take your time and be selective in your line choice and you might be surprised at what you can get away with in the XRT. The traction control and all-wheel drive systems are polished and don't throw the toys out the cot when a wheel or two goes in the air. In some instances, the petrol engine actually disengaged entirely and left the electric motor to do the hard yards in just such scenarios. Okay, now tackling this slope in reverse now, the hill descent control caps things at 5 k's an hour, which is probably enough for your average SUV descent, but in really technical terrain, it really ought to be a little bit slower than that, but that's where a little bit of foot brake comes in and you're good to go. But then again, the average SUV buyer isn't going to be handling terrain like this all that often. But don't let that extra composure and sure-footedness fool you. The XRT is still a long way short of being a proper adventure rig. While it does have extra clearance and a bit of extra suspension travel, it can't compete with something like an Everest or a Prado. It simply doesn't have the angles or suspension reach to conquer truly rough terrain. Where it does shine, however, is on the beach, with those big volume tyres bagging out nicely over the soft sand. The hybrid system provides plenty of low-end grunt to keep things rolling along, while the sand terrain mode backs the traction and stability controls right off, almost to the point of no interference at all. The XRT's extra clearance also means the Santa Fe hardly ever drags its belly on the sand, and in this case, the Peak Pack's roof platform means you've got somewhere to put your recovery gear without taking up the cabin space. So what have we learned today? Well, we've learned that the Santa Fe XRT is quite the all-terrain SUV, if not quite a genuine off-roader. But then again, that's hardly a surprise. It's a monocoque SUV, there's no locking diff and no low-range gearing. It also lacks the angles and suspension articulation needed for harder tracks, and despite Hyundai citing rough and jagged terrain in its marketing materials, that's not what the XRT is really about. It's about getting families out and about in nature and providing more versatility than the average 3-row SUV without detracting from the on-road experience, something it does quite well. But there is a catch. It is mightily expensive to the point of competing with Ford Everests and Toyota Prados, and to be frank, there's nothing we did today that a Subaru Outback couldn't do for a good $10,000 to $20,000 less. So for now at least, good on Hyundai for carving out a new niche for the Santa Fe, but the XRT makeover is just too dear to wholeheartedly recommend, especially in such a crowded and competitive segment. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, And let us know in the comments, what are your thoughts on the XRT? Would you buy one of these or a proper off-roader?